Imagine this: a newly elected black governor, full of hope and ready to make history, walks into his office on his first day, only to face the ultimate humiliation. His secretary, unaware of who he is, refuses to let him in. She assumes he's just another visitor and dismisses him without a second thought. What follows is an unbelievable clash of identity, power, and assumption that will leave you on the edge of your seat. This story isn't just about one man's fight to claim his rightful place. It's a story about how deeply rooted biases can cloud judgment, even in the most professional settings. As the tension builds and misunderstandings spiral out of control, the question arises: how will the governor handle this? Will he lose his composure, or will he rise above and take charge in a way no one sees coming? Stay tuned, because this tale has twists that will make you question everything about perception, respect, and the power dynamics at play. What happened next inside that office will shock you, inspire you, and maybe even challenge how you see the world. Let's dive into this remarkable story that's as thought-provoking as it is unforgettable. As the governor stood at the entrance, confusion and disbelief flashed across his face. He had worked tirelessly to get to this moment, campaigning day and night, shaking hands, winning over hearts, and securing the votes that led him here. But now, the very office he was elected to lead felt like hostile territory. The secretary, seated behind her desk, barely looked up as she waved him off. "I'm sorry, sir. The governor doesn't take walk-ins," she said flatly, tapping away at her keyboard. Her tone was firm, almost dismissive, as if she'd dealt with this kind of interruption countless times before. The governor hesitated. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Should he assert himself and risk causing a scene? Or should he explain, calmly, and risk not being taken seriously? A quick glance around the room showed others watching the interaction with curiosity, but no one stepped in. He opened his mouth to respond, but the secretary cut him off. "If you don't have an appointment, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Her words hung in the air like a challenge. The governor straightened his tie, his jaw tightening. Whatever came next, he knew this was just the beginning. The governor took a deep breath, holding back the frustration bubbling inside. He glanced at the nameplate on her desk. Margaret Hayes, Executive Secretary. Margaret was clearly dedicated to her job, but in her effort to protect the office, she had unintentionally created a barrier between him and his own position. He could see the determination in her eyes, the kind that said she didn't take nonsense from anyone. Before he could respond, a man in a suit exited a nearby conference room, holding a clipboard. He paused when he noticed the exchange, his eyes darting between the governor and Margaret. "Everything all right here?" he asked, clearly picking up on the tension. Margaret didn't even look up. "Just handling it," she said confidently. The governor decided it was time to speak up. "Actually, I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm not here for a meeting. I am the governor." The room went quiet for a moment. Margaret let out a short laugh, almost as if he'd cracked a joke. "Right," she said sarcastically, glancing up for the first time. But when their eyes met, something shifted. Her smirk faltered slightly, though she quickly masked it. The man with the clipboard froze, his expression unreadable. "Governor?" he asked cautiously, his tone filled with doubt, but also curiosity. Margaret's fingers hovered over her keyboard, her confidence shaken just a little. Yet, she still didn't move. The room was now filled with an almost unbearable tension, and everyone seemed to be holding their breath. The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. The governor could feel the weight of every eye in the room, their curiosity turning into disbelief. He had prepared for many challenges in this role, but this was something entirely unexpected. Margaret finally broke the silence, her tone sharper now. "Sir, I don't know who you think you are, but this isn't the place for pranks. The governor is a busy man, and I don't have time for this." The man with the clipboard hesitated, his face flickering with unease. "Margaret," he said slowly, "maybe we should double-check." "There's nothing to check," she cut him off. "He doesn't have an appointment, and I don't need to waste the governor's time." The governor took a step forward, his voice steady but carrying an unmistakable edge. "Miss Hayes, I assure you, this is no prank. I was sworn in just yesterday. I'm here to lead this state, and I expect to be treated with the respect that comes with this office." The clipboard man tried to stammer out a defense, but the evidence was overwhelming. The security team moved swiftly, escorting him out of the room as he continued to protest. The governor turned to the room, his voice steady and authoritative. "Let this be a reminder to all of us. The work we do here is too important to be undermined by doubt or deception. We have to trust each other, but we also have to remain vigilant." Margaret nodded, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Governor," she said softly, "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize." He offered her a small smile, his tone kind but firm. "You were doing your job, Margaret. But next time, maybe double-check before jumping to conclusions." As the room began to settle, the governor took a deep breath, the tension finally easing. But even as the situation seemed resolved, one thought lingered in his mind. If someone was willing to go this far to impersonate him, what other challenges might lie ahead? For now, though, he walked into his office, ready to take on whatever came next. As the governor settled into his office for the first time, he took a moment to reflect on the chaotic morning. It wasn't the triumphant start he had imagined, but it was a powerful reminder of the challenges that came with leadership. The incident had tested his patience, his composure, and his ability to navigate difficult situations, all within hours of taking the role. Margaret, still shaken by the events, knocked softly on his door. "Governor," she began hesitantly, "I just wanted to say thank you for handling this with so much grace. I'll make sure nothing like this happens again." He looked up from his desk, offering her a reassuring smile. "Margaret, this isn't about blame. It's about learning. You trusted your instincts, and that's an important skill in this office. Let's move forward as a team." Her shoulders relaxed slightly, and she nodded before stepping out. Outside, the staff bustled with renewed focus. The governor's security team ensured the building was secure, and any lingering doubts were replaced with determination to protect their leader. As Governor Thompson glanced out the window, he couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. Today wasn't just about reclaiming his office. It was a reminder of the resilience and clarity he'd need to lead the state forward. For a moment, Margaret seemed to falter, her fingers gripping the edge of her desk. But before she could respond, another door opened behind her. A senior staff member stepped out, scanning the scene. His eyes landed on the governor, widening in shock. "Governor Thompson," he said, his voice loud enough to echo through the room. Margaret froze, the realization starting to sink in. The room, once buzzing with quiet murmurs, now felt like a powder keg about to explode. The governor stood tall, his presence commanding, but even he knew this moment wasn't over. What happened next could either diffuse the tension or turn this into an even bigger spectacle. Margaret's eyes darted between the senior staff member and the governor, her face pale with disbelief. The words Governor Thompson seemed to hang in the air, undeniable and inescapable. She stood up slowly, her usually confident demeanor now replaced with hesitation. I didn't know," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. But just as she was about to apologize, the man with the clipboard stepped forward. "Wait," he said, his tone cautious. "Before we jump to conclusions, I think we need to confirm something." His gaze shifted toward the senior staffer. "You're sure this is the governor?" The staff member frowned, taken aback. "Of course I'm sure," he replied. "He was sworn in yesterday. There's no mistaking it." Margaret looked at the clipboard man, then back at the governor, doubt flickering across her face again. "But if that's true," she said slowly, "why hasn't his security team arrived? The governor doesn't just walk in alone." The room tensed. It was a valid question. The governor, now realizing the depth of the misunderstanding, glanced at his watch. His team had been delayed by an unexpected traffic jam on their way from an earlier meeting. He had decided to head to the office ahead of them, thinking nothing of it. Before he could explain, a voice from the back of the room interrupted. "If he's really the governor," someone muttered, "why didn't he just show ID?" The comment rippled through the room, reigniting the uncertainty. Margaret straightened, as if grasping onto this lingering doubt. "Exactly," she said, regaining some of her composure. "If you're the governor, you'll understand why I need proof. You understand how many people try to pull stunts like this." The governor's jaw tightened, the weight of the situation settling on him. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a wallet, but just as he began to speak, the door burst open. His security team stormed in, their presence commanding and their expressions serious. But instead of diffusing the situation, it only escalated. The lead security officer approached the governor, his face tense. "Sir," he said quietly, "we need to talk. There's been a development." The governor's stomach sank. Margaret and the rest of the room watched, the air thick with suspense. Whatever was about to be said wasn't just going to complicate the moment, it was about to change everything. The governor turned to his lead security officer, his expression tightening. "What's going on?" he asked in a low voice, though the room was silent enough for everyone to hear. The officer hesitated, clearly uneasy. "Sir, there's been a breach." Someone posing as a state official was intercepted near the building. They were carrying forged documents claiming to be, well, you. The room erupted in murmurs, and Margaret's eyes widened in shock. Her earlier doubts about the governor's identity now seemed less like stubbornness and more like instinct. She looked at him, a mix of guilt and confusion crossing her face. I didn't mean to," she started, but her voice trailed off. The governor held up a hand, silencing her. "It's all right," he said firmly, his tone calm despite the chaos. "You were doing your job, and I respect that." But before anyone could relax, the officer continued, "The situation isn't fully under control yet. We believe the impersonator might have had help on the inside." The words sent a ripple of unease through the room. Margaret's face paled again, her earlier confidence completely shattered. "Help on the inside," she repeated, her voice trembling. The governor locked eyes with her, but before he could speak, the man with the clipboard suddenly stepped back, fumbling with his phone. The security team noticed immediately, and one of the officers stepped forward, grabbing the phone out of his hands. The man protested, but his nervous energy betrayed him. The lead officer glanced at the screen and then at the governor. "Sir," he said gravely, "it seems this man has been communicating with the impersonator." The room froze. Margaret looked at the man in disbelief. "You," she whispered, her voice breaking.